got loyalty, got royalty inside my DNA.
The Sacramento Kings improved to 3-6 after a 121-109 victory in Atlanta to close out their 3-game road trip. They're headed back to Sacramento to take on the Portland Trail Blazers coming up on November 12th at the Golden One Center. There is a lot to dissect with this game here in Atlanta. We saw the return of Harry Giles. We saw the return of Trevor Ariza. Now, those two returns are two very different things, but we did see the return of both of them, and I'll explain here as the day rolls along, as the show rolls along, as this podcast rolls along. There's a couple of different stories I think worth talking about here in this game. The two things that stand out to me the most for the Sacramento Kings is their three-point shooting, and for the Atlanta Hawks were their points in the paint. And I'm going to tell you how those two things coexist and how those two things ultimately led to the Sacramento Kings winning. There was a point there in the second quarter where the Sacramento Kings were up by 21 points. They took a 6-point lead into halftime. They took an 8-point lead into the fourth quarter. And very, very early in that fourth quarter, we saw the lead get cut down to 1. It was 94-93, and all of the momentum was at the backs of the Atlanta Hawks. And that was it. That's pretty much the end of it right there. The Hawks, they never got over that 94-93 hump. As a matter of fact, the Sacramento Kings came out firing, and they wound up blowing them out. They just never, they were never able to take that next step. And I think part of the reason was, and this is a reason that they weren't able to, the Kings left the door wide open for the Atlanta Hawks, particularly there late in the third quarter when the lead had gotten down, had gotten from 16. It ultimately ended at 8, but it had gotten down there to 4. It had gotten down there to 6. And the Hawks had a number of opportunities to walk through that door and just kick the Kings in the gut before the fourth quarter even started. But I noticed something about the way that they played. And this is, again, as we noted, Trae Young had a really hot third quarter there, 16 points. He had a ton of assists. Like, he was involved in everything the Sacramento Kings have been doing. He'd been relatively quiet up until that point. Lots going to be made of the Luke Walton challenge. I hate this coach's challenge. I don't think I've seen it work, but I'm losing track between the NBA challenges and the NFL challenges. I feel like none of them work. This is the first time that I recall seeing a coach challenge a play and the play result in points against the coach that challenged the play. As stupid as that sounds, it's even stupider to watch because it was at that moment that the Atlanta Hawks went on their run in the third quarter. Kings were up 18 when Luke Walton challenged a foul. And it was sideline out of bounds. It was originally a foul on Trey Young. The referees changed it and said it was a foul on De'Aaron Fox. Luke Walton threw the fictitious red challenge flag, and suddenly it went on to be free throws for the Hawks. And the Hawks started running after that. That really got Trey Young going. There's going to be a lot made of that. A lot less because the Sacramento Kings won the game. Oh boy, if they had lost, that would have been a topic of conversation for the next couple of days. Because, again, the Kings don't play until they take on the Portland Trail Blazers on November 12th. But what I noticed during that run, as hot as Trae Young got, as hot as the Atlanta Hawks overall got, they deviated from what was working for them. Trae Young, one of the things that made him a really exciting player his rookie year was the fact that he takes those Steph Curry-length threes, the fact that he just pulls up in traffic and takes three-pointers. He did that a lot today. As a matter of fact, a number of the Atlanta Hawks did today. And, man, it didn't work. But you know what was working was the paint. The paint was working for them. They were getting dunks. They were getting alley-oops. They were getting uncontested layups. Their run there in the third quarter, they had a 12-0 run at one point. That was broken up by De'Aaron Fox. That was an inside presence. 100% an inside presence. They outscored the Kings 66-36 in paint points. But the problem for the Hawks is they want those highlights. They want to be that exciting team. And what made it worse for them is they were attempting to match the threes the Kings were taking. Kings shot 31 threes. Now, by the measurement of their season so far, that's not a ton. Good number, not a ton. What's amazing is that they hit 18 of them. That's the difference in the ball game right there. 18 of 31 threes. I just gave you the points in the paint. 66-36. It was working for the Atlanta Hawks. Yet, they still shot 28 three-pointers. Many of them were contested, and some of them, we need to have a three-point range, and then we need to have like the super-duper three-point range. Because that's what Trae Young was doing. Like, he was just pulling up from like, what are you doing, man? He was pulling up from like 30 feet regularly. Now, he did it a couple of times when he wasn't in a groove. He did it a couple of times when it felt like he was looking for something to get himself going. Because, again, he wasn't. He wasn't going at all. And then he took two more after he had gotten hot there in the third quarter. But remember, that lead in the third quarter had gotten down to 4. And the Kings, they stretched it back to 8. All right, back down to 6. They got it back to 8. Got it back down to 4, and they got it back to 8. Like, that kept happening there towards I would say over the course of the last 3.5 minutes of the third quarter. But you would see Trey Young take these bad shots. You would see the Atlanta Hawks take these bad shots. And I'm looking, and I finally get to some point midway through the third quarter or late in the third quarter where I'm pulling up, like, let me find these team stats with points in the paint. And I see how they're just dominating on the inside. I'm watching that like, why don't you stick to what's working? Like, this is working. If you had an opportunity, I would argue, and I could certainly be wrong. Like, I don't know. It's a hypothetical game here. But if the Atlanta Hawks had taken the lead, just a 1-point lead or a 2-point lead at the end of the third quarter heading into the fourth, they could have mentally put the Sacramento Kings away. But what kept them from doing that is that they kept deviating away from what was working for them. But this is a Sacramento Kings podcast, not an Atlanta Hawks podcast. So who gives a damn what the Atlanta Hawks were doing right and doing wrong? What matters is what the Sacramento Kings did. And what they did is they hit 58.1% of the threes. Another thing we saw them do that we don't see very often from them is they hit their free throws at a pretty high clip. They didn't shoot a ton of them. And this was a relatively clean game, by the way. I didn't feel like the teams were living at the foul line. I didn't feel like this game was just overwhelmingly slow. I didn't feel like there were a lot of turnovers. Matter of fact, I think I got the turnovers right in front of me. 15 for Sacramento, 13 for the Atlanta Hawks. So nothing egregious there. But the Kings were 19-22 at the foul line. So they took advantage of their three-pointers, and they took advantage of their free baskets as well. 42 of 76 from the field. And again, I say the difference in this game is the Sacramento Kings three-point percentage. Kings were 42 of 76 from the field. The Atlanta Hawks were 46 of 87. That's a 55% clip to a 52% clip. That's not outrageous. It's certainly not a 12-point win outrageous. But man, it felt like, and not only did the Kings hit a lot of threes, they hit a lot of timely threes. And I joked at the beginning of this podcast that we saw the return of Harry Giles, which we did at the beginning of the second quarter. Man, we saw the return of Trevor Ariza. And I think we might have seen the debut of Coach Luke Walton. I think we saw something today from Luke Walton that we haven't seen all year. There was a point in the fourth quarter after the lead had gotten down. As we mentioned, it was 94-93. The Kings got going immediately after Luke Walton called the timeout right there. The Kings got going, and Corey Joseph was out there. Bogdan Bogdanovic was out there. Trevor Ariza was out there. We didn't see, some coaches go on a clock. Like, oh, it's 6 minutes left. Let's get Buddy and De'Aaron back in there. It's 4.5 minutes left. Let's get Rashawn Holmes back in there. That didn't happen. And I feel like Luke Walton is one of those guys who coaches on a clock, and there's not a lot of them. This isn't exclusive to Luke Walton by any stretch of the imagination. There are a lot of coaches that Kings fans know. George Karl, he was a clock coach. It didn't matter what type of momentum the lineup had out there on the floor. If it came time, if that clock hit the time that the sub normally comes in or that the starter goes back in the game, damn it, that starter went back in. If that reserve player had hit 14 3-pointers in a row, it didn't matter. It was time. That's what the clock said. I think today was the first day, at least it was the first time that I could remember that we saw kind of a deviation in Luke Walton's normal rotations. That group there in the fourth quarter for the Sacramento Kings, they were running the Hawks, and they were frustrating the Hawks. And Luke Walton left him out there. Bogdan Bogdanović was a big part of it. Corey Joseph played 29 minutes tonight. Dwayne Dedmon played 11. Trevor Ariza played 24. Like, we saw those guys out there working. Bogey was 5 of 6 shooting, and it felt like every single one of those 3-pointers were timely. Not just the 3-pointers, but the 1 2-pointer that he made. It felt very timely. He got the job done today. 20 points off of the bench, 14 points for Trevor Ariza. He was 4 of 6. You often hear the term that shooting is contagious, both good and bad. Well, tonight for the Sacramento Kings, the shooting was contagious in a very, very good way. And another good number, a great number to watch. 42 made baskets for the Sacramento Kings, 27 assists. There was ball movement. And I can't even think off the top of my head a 3-pointer that wasn't assisted. I'm thinking of Harrison Barnes in the corner a couple of times. Bogey hit a big step back 3 in the fourth quarter. Obviously, that one was unassisted. But when you run through the highlights of the Sacramento Kings tonight, or you go back and you watch the game a second time, or you watch a condensed version, or you watch highlights or film, you're going to see a lot of those 3-pointers that were made tonight, and there were 18 of them. They were assisted. So 27 assists for the Sacramento Kings, an absolutely great number for them. Trevor Ariza, as I mentioned, he was 4 of 6. Buddy, 3 of 8 from 3. Nemanja Bjelica, who got the game started with back-to-back 3-pointers. The Kings were down 6-0, and Belly came out, hit back-to-back 3-pointers. He scored 13 on the day. Not the big performance from Rashawn Holmes, though he did lead the team in rebounding. His energy, even when his baskets aren't there, even when the point column isn't adding up, his energy level is always exactly the same. And that's what I love about him, and I think that's what Kings fans love so much about him, is if he's not scoring, it doesn't matter. He's still going to play hard. Let's head out to Luke Walton.
Good team win for us. It showed a lot of resilience as a group, and that's what we're looking for as we keep moving on in the season. I thought we showed a lot in Toronto. We weren't able to win that game. But you get on the road in this league against a team that gets hot and momentum gets going, it's tough to stop it in its tracks like our guys did tonight. So, good contributions from first unit guys, second unit guys, and that's why we're always preaching team. It doesn't matter who starts, who finishes. It matters who's out there playing well. It was nice to get Harry back. And, Trevor, Corey, Bogey, some of our bench guys had really big games for us tonight.
What do you think's been the difference in terms of hitting shots and missing them as you guys did in the first week?
Yeah, we've been getting good shots early. We're getting them now. I think it's just kind of getting our legs under us a little bit, getting more familiar with each other. It always takes a little bit of time to, you know where your teammates like to shoot. Do they like shooting coming left, coming right? What's the play calls, the spacing, all these things. It just, it takes some time, and we have really good shooters on our team. We know that. Our front office has done an incredible job of building that. So we're going to keep taking them. And there's, whether they're going in or not, when we're open, we want our guys letting it fly. And tonight, just, we happen to make a good amount of them.
Are you seeing better spacing and angles?
Yeah, our spacing's getting better. It still needs to get a lot better for where we're planning on going. But it's getting better. The progress is happening. The guys continue to work, and we, as a staff, continue to work and drill, and happy with where we're at and where we're, the progress that we're making.
What'd you see from Harry, and what are your thoughts on how that looks going forward with 3 5s you want to play?
Goes back to the idea of, look, we're a team. So I thought Harry looked great tonight. I'll watch the film on the flight home and have a better understanding of what he did out there. But I thought his energy, his his toughness, his passing ability really showed in those minutes. But I also thought, our other bigs had great moments. I thought Rashawn finished the game like a winner. He was out there shocking the ball and running back and rebounding, and DD stepped up like a solid vet, knocked down some free throws and late in that third when they were on a run, made some nice plays defensively. So everyone brings different things to the table. It's my job to see in that game what do we need the most. That's who I go with, and we support each other, whatever that decision is.
You mentioned Ariza, Bogey, Corey. Is this a good representation of the kind of depth you feel like you have on this team?
I think so. I think they've shown great leadership since they've been here, and tonight, on the court, that they made really impressive plays in a tough environment when another team had all the momentum. So I think they showed why they've been winners their whole careers.
What talk a little bit about the lead getting down to one, and then what it took to kind of reestablish yourselves there.
You got to give them credit. They kept fighting. Trae is a heck of a player, and they have the same idea we do. Get a dynamic point guard and give him space. And once he gets hot, he can shoot from 40. So the momentum shifted, and we had some good looks that didn't go. That's basketball. But what we're trying to do is get good shots every time down, and every time down defensively, make them take tough shots. And credit to our players for sticking with it and taking that run and then going on our own run to end the game.
One thing we're touching on there is Luke Walton wraps up his post-game media scrum. Obviously some talk about Harry Giles there. Harry Giles started the second quarter for the Sacramento Kings, and this has been a week where we've heard a lot and read a lot about Harry. We know that the Sacramento Kings declined to pick up his option for next season. If you were with us the day the regular season started, hopefully you heard our conversation with James Ham where we talked about the mystery of Harry Giles, and Ham let us know that the Kings weren't particularly thrilled with how he came into camp, and they weren't particularly thrilled with the shape that he was in. And it felt like this week there was a lot of stuff written and said about Harry Giles' work ethic and about his approach to the offseason and what the Sacramento Kings thought and or think of him. I don't know. James Ham was the first one to bring it to our attention when he said he's kind of been a cloud of mystery. He's been kept from us. We haven't really gotten to talk to him. As a matter of fact, we haven't got to talk to him since media day. We thought he was going to be ready to go. It turns out that he wasn't. He didn't make the trip to India. Now you've got the declined option, and it reeked of a smear campaign. Like I didn't understand it. Like why is this stuff all being said now? And this is kind of the danger of having so many unanswered questions surrounding one player. And Harry was, and we've talked about it on this podcast quite a bit. We've devoted almost entire episodes to the mystery that was Harry Giles' preseason and his training camp. And I just didn't get how all of a sudden Jason Jones, not that, and I'm very, very confident Jason Jones has had this information long before this week. But it was written about this week, and it was, touched on more from James Ham this week. Virtually every single person who covers the Sacramento Kings had something to say about Harry Giles and his work ethic in the offseason and why the Kings didn't pick up the option. And Harry Giles he's a fan favorite, and he's a guy that I think a lot of Kings fans were rooting for, and I still believe a lot of Sacramento Kings fans are rooting for. He's kind of an impossible guy not to root for, knowing what he's been through. You want the best for him. I didn't like the way that all went down this week, and I don't know the origins of it. I'm telling you my opinion on it. This is an opinion portion here of the podcast. Now that we've got the game covered, I just didn't really love how it seemed it was almost like a press release went out to, a select number of Kings media saying, okay, here's the story on Harry. And it was like, wait, you could decline to pick up the option on Harry Giles. Like, that's absolutely fine. But we're going to start challenging the dude's work ethic. Like, after that, again, you've got cap decisions that you have to make. You've got a salary cap that you've got to navigate, and you've got 2 potential max players coming up over the next couple of years. You're entitled to not bring a player back, whether it's $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, or whatever you think Harry Giles is going to command here in the upcoming offseason. I don't imagine it's going to be that much. I just didn't like it. It felt uncomfortable. It was weird, especially for Harry. It was weird. I don't know. Harry Giles is a guy that I feel like a lot of people root for, and there's one thing, or there's 2. There are 2 things that Sacramento Kings fans, especially the vocal portion of Sacramento Kings fans, will not stand for. 1, don't talk about money, and 2, you better not be lacking effort. I think that's why Kings fans love Richaun Holmes so much, because you're never going to look at Richaun Holmes and go, man, I wish he had more energy, or man, I wish he was playing hard or harder. Kings fans, they do not tolerate lack of effort. So if you throw out, oh, yeah, we don't really like Harry Giles' work ethic, suddenly the antennas go up like, oh, yeah, Harry's going to be here in Sacramento and he's not going to work. And from what it seems like, man, no one bought it. I think everyone was just like bummed, like, really? Oh, man, that sucks. We dig Harry. Like, he's cool. We'll see what he's able to do. He only played 8 minutes today. You heard Luke Walton say there he's going to go examine the film. Like, they are, some members of the media were reporting that there was a target date for the game on Tuesday against the Portland Trail Blazers. The first person, I'm sure a number of other people did. I know the Sacramento Kings Twitter account did, but the first tweet that I saw was from Gary Gerald, who said that the Sacramento Kings had announced that Harry Giles was going to be active for tonight's game. And again, the first quarter came and went. When we got back from commercial break there to start the second, Harry Giles was out there on the floor. Played a total of 8 minutes. I felt like the Kings were up quite a bit. They were up by 7, I think it was, to start the second quarter. And Harry came in and a couple baskets, a couple free throws, block shot, and that was about it. And that was kind of his time. I don't know what his season's going to look like. They've got the Blazers coming up on Tuesday. They've got the Lakers on Friday in LA, and then they're back to take on the Boston Celtics, a game I'm looking forward to on Sunday. So I'm anxious to see, do we see an increase? Again, just 8 minutes tonight. The question to Luke Walton just a few moments ago was kind of that crowded front court. It's like, well, what are you going to do with him? I mean, Dedmon got some run out there. Of course, Belly's getting some run. Richaun Holmes, we see what's going on there. So it's a story to follow for sure. But the story of today is the Sacramento Kings, they hit their threes. They hit them at a hell of a clip, and that was the difference between them winning and losing. The Sacramento Kings now move to 3-6, wrapping up this 3-game road trip. 2-1. Not bad. Not bad at all. Wrapping it up 2-1. A pretty hard-fought game against the Portland Trail Blazers. Or a pretty hard-fought game, against the Toronto Raptors. Hopefully, a hard-fought game against the Portland Trail Blazers, which results in a win. But that's a little forecasting. That game is not until Tuesday at the Golden One Center. As always, appreciate you so much for being a part of the show. If you're not a subscriber yet, please do become one. Hit the subscribe button there on Apple Podcast. If you got a split second, you see those stars right there. If you could hit the 5th one, that would be great. If you got an extra 60 to 90 seconds and you want us to leave us a review, we'd greatly appreciate that. If you want to hear some sports talk outside the realm of the Sacramento Kings, check out the podcast with Damian Barling, available on this very same podcast platform that you're listening to this one on. And I've got all sorts of products I could show to you. I even got a new health and fitness podcast that you could check out. It's called In the Game. So if health and fitness is your thing, or you want it to be your thing as 2020 approaches, check that out. Appreciate you again so much for tuning in. The Sacramento Kings get the win, 121-109. They're leaving Atlanta winners. They're leaving Atlanta 3-6. We will be back after the game at the Golden One Center on Tuesday here on the Sacramento Kings podcast, presented by Hoopball and the Hoopball Podcast Network.